this flick?
Well, we follow Bumpy Johnson, who comes out of prison, goes back into Harlem to be able to try to reclaim his territories. He's been in Way for about 11 years. We get a chance to see him and his family,
For decades, we've been fed half-truths from gangster flicks about the Godfather of Harlem. But now, thanks to Bumpy's widow, Mamie Johnson, we're getting the real deal. Her detailed notes peel back the curtain on the mythos surrounding her husband, revealing a man who was more than just a legend. He was a father, a husband, a man with a family of his own. But here's the twist. While Bumpy's story is well known, his family's tale remains shrouded in mystery. What happened to Mamie and the children she and Bumpy brought into the world? Find out in this video. Bumpy Johnson's family. Let's start with Bumpy Johnson's wife, Mamie Hatcher Johnson. She was a woman of strength and resilience. She was more than just the wife of Harlem kingpin Bumpy Johnson. Born in 1914 in North Carolina, Mamie's early years were marked by the harsh realities of the Jim Crow era. During this period of separate but equal segregation, Black Americans in the southern U.S. faced immense challenges and dangers. Seeking a better life, Mamie, like many others, migrated to the northern states, where opportunities and safety awaited. In 1938, Mamie arrived in the vibrant city of New York, ready to carve out her own path. She found work as a waitress in a club, immersing herself in the bustling nightlife of Harlem. In 1948, fate intervened when Mamie crossed paths with the notorious Bumpy Johnson. Their connection was instant, and just 6 months later, in October, they exchanged vows and became husband and wife. Mamie recalled the moment Bumpy proposed, saying, "Suddenly turned to me and said, 'Mamie, I think you and I should go ahead and get married.' I was stunned, but I kept my composure. I said simply, 'Is that right?' He said, 'Yes, that's right.'" Married life with Bumpy Johnson was nothing short of extraordinary for Mamie. She found herself treated like royalty, gaining access to exclusive venues, and being showered with lavish gifts and jewelry. Wherever she went, Mamie was treated like a queen, basking in the admiration and respect that came with being Bumpy's wife. Mamie's strong religious beliefs guided her actions, and she became known for her charitable work and numerous volunteer activities through St. Martin's Episcopal Church. Her dedication to helping others was a testament to her compassionate nature and desire to make a positive impact on her community. Despite rumors of Bumpy's romantic involvement with popular socialite and editor Helen Lawson, Mamie remained steadfastly by his side. Their love endured even during Bumpy's 15-year incarceration in 1951. Where he served time for his criminal activities. Throughout his imprisonment, Mamie remained a pillar of support, never wavering in her commitment to their marriage. Tragically, Bumpy Johnson's life came to an end in 1968. However, Mamie Johnson's devotion to her late husband did not waver. She never remarried, choosing instead to dedicate her golden years to preserving Bumpy's legacy. Mamie embarked on the monumental task of writing a biography of her late husband, delving into the intricate details of his life as a notorious Harlem figure. Her tireless efforts culminated in the release of her novel in 2008, when she was 93 years old. Mamie's book provided a glimpse into the true story of Bumpy Johnson, dispelling the half-truths perpetuated by gangster films and shedding light on the man behind the myth. Mamie Johnson's life came to a close in May 2009, leaving behind a legacy of strength, love, and loyalty. Her story, intertwined with that of Bumpy Johnson, is a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. Let's turn our attention to his daughters, Ruthie Johnson and Elise Johnson. These women, shaped by their unique circumstances, embarked on their own journeys filled with triumphs and hardships. Ruthie Johnson, the daughter born to Bumpy and Mamie Johnson, led a life that largely stayed out of the public eye. Unfortunately, not much is known about her, leaving us with only fragments of her existence. However, it is important to acknowledge her place within the Johnson family and the impact she had on their lives. On the other hand, Elise Johnson's story is one that is easier to trace. Elise, Mamie Johnson's stepdaughter, entered the Johnson family from a previous relationship with Bumpy's. Like the other women in Bumpy's life, Elise was exposed to a life of luxury and extravagance. However, her father's criminal record allegedly hindered her from pursuing higher education and achieving her full potential. The hardships she faced would ultimately lead her down a path of struggle and addiction. Elise's life took a tragic turn as she succumbed to the grip of heroin addiction. The allure of the drug proved too powerful, and she found herself trapped in its destructive cycle. Her addiction led to frequent encounters with the law, with shoplifting becoming a recurring issue. These bouts of trouble left Elise unable to care for her daughter Margaret, adding another layer of complexity to her already tumultuous life. While Elise had connections to civil rights leader Malcolm X through her father, it has never been proven that the two were romantically linked. However, the influence of her father's associations undoubtedly shaped Elise's experiences and the world she navigated navigated. In 2006, tragedy struck the Johnson family as both Elise and her younger half-sister Ruthie passed away in the same year. Their deaths marked the end of an era, leaving behind a legacy of both triumphs and tragedies. Unable to care for her daughter Margaret herself, Elise made the difficult decision to leave her in the care of her grandparents, Bumpy and Mamie Johnson. The Johnsons embraced Margaret as their own, showering her with love, attention, and the finest things in life. They even enrolled her in one of New York's most prestigious private schools, providing her with opportunities they themselves were denied. Margaret's life took an unexpected turn when she unwittingly became involved in her grandfather's activities. She inadvertently earned a commission by calculating the gambling income he made through the illegal lottery known as the numbers game. This unexpected connection to her grandfather's world would later shape her life in unforeseen ways. Despite facing physical challenges, including being wheelchair-bound due to a dislocated hip and a slipped disc, Margaret proved to be a force to be reckoned with. Her determination and resilience were evident when she earned the nickname Annie Oakley of Harlem after shooting a man who attempted to rob her. Despite her physical limitations, Margaret managed to protect her belongings and detain the would-be robber until authorities arrived. Margaret Johnson was well-liked by her community and admired for her strength and her commitment to helping others. She followed in the philanthropic footsteps of her grandparents, dedicating herself to making a positive impact on her neighborhood. Her presence was felt, and her contributions were invaluable. In 2016, Margaret's journey came to an end, leaving behind a legacy that continues through her son, Anthony Johnson. As the torchbearer of the Johnson name, Anthony carries the stories and experiences of his family's extraordinary journey. The Johnson family's story intertwines with the rich tapestry of Harlem's history. Bumpy Johnson, the Godfather of Harlem, was the first black man to stand up against the white mobsters of New York and live to tell the tale. His fearless determination and spirit made him a legend in the streets, and his name became synonymous with power and respect. But behind every great man is a woman, and Mamie Hatcher Johnson was the rock that stood beside Bumpy throughout his tumultuous life. Mamie's commitment to her husband's memory and her charitable work showcased her strength and compassion. She was a pillar of the community, using her influence and resources to uplift those in need. Ruthie Johnson, though living a relatively obscure life, played her part in the Johnson family's legacy. Elise Johnson's story, though filled with tragedy, is a caution of the consequences of a life marred by addiction and hardship. Her struggles and the challenges she faced highlight the complexities of the world she inhabited. Margaret Johnson, the granddaughter raised by Bumpy and Mamie, embodied the spirit of her grandparents. Despite her physical limitations, she defied the odds and became a symbol of strength and resilience. Bumpy Johnson's journey into the world of crime began at a young age, as he found himself drawn to the allure of the streets. Growing up in Harlem, he was exposed to a world of poverty, racial tension, and limited opportunities. It was within this environment that Bumpy's path took a fateful turn. By the age of 15, Johnson had already fallen in with a crowd that dabbled in illicit activities. He found himself working odd jobs during the day, but it was during the evenings that he truly came alive. Bumpy and his gang of merry men would gather in dimly lit pool halls, engaging in high-stakes games of billiards and shooting dice for money. It was here that Bumpy's natural charisma and street smarts began to shine. As Bumpy approached his 16th birthday, he and his gang took their criminal endeavors to the next level. They began selling protection to local businesses, ensuring their safety in exchange for a cut of the profits. This protection racket allowed Bumpy and his crew to establish a reputation for themselves in the neighborhood. However, it wasn't long before Bumpy's ambitions led him down a darker path. The allure of armed robberies proved too tempting to resist, and soon Bumpy found himself involved in a series of daring heists. With each successful robbery, his confidence grew, and his reputation as a fearless criminal began to spread throughout Harlem. It was during this time that Bumpy crossed paths with William "Bub" Hewlett, a seasoned gangster who recognized the young man's potential. Impressed by Bumpy's boldness and refusal to back down, Hewlett saw an opportunity to harness his talents. One day, as Bumpy stood his ground outside Bub's storefront, refusing to leave, Hewlett extended an offer that would change the course of Bumpy's life. Hewlett invited Bumpy to work for him, offering him a position as a protector of Harlem's high-profile numbers runners. These runners were responsible for collecting bets and ensuring the smooth operation of the illegal numbers game that had taken hold of the neighborhood. Bumpy's reputation as a street-savvy enforcer made him the perfect fit for this role. Under Hewlett's guidance, Bumpy honed his skills as a bodyguard and enforcer. He quickly gained a reputation for his willingness to do whatever it took to protect those under his watch. Bumpy's association with Hewlett provided him with a sense of purpose and a taste of the power that came with being a part of the criminal underworld. While card rooms offering popular games like poker and blackjack flourished in cities across America, it was the numbers game that truly captivated Harlem. Also known as the numbers racket or Italian lottery, this illegal lottery had gained popularity in the 1920s and 30s. With bets starting at just a penny, the game appealed to the poor and working-class residents of the neighborhood. Harlem's numbers game had attracted the attention of Bronx mob boss Dutch Schultz, who sought to monopolize the lucrative racket. Schultz's aggressive tactics left many independent bookmakers with no choice but to work under his control or face dire consequences. However, there was one woman who refused to back down. Stephanie St. Clair, known as the Queen of the Policy Rackets, was one of the few female racket runners in Harlem. She saw the potential in Bumpy Johnson and recognized his ability to challenge Schultz's dominance. St. Clair enlisted Bumpy's help, and together they waged war against the powerful crime bosses who sought to control Harlem's numbers game. Bumpy's reputation as a bold and brutal bodyguard made him a valuable asset in this battle. He became a key player in St. Clair's efforts to resist Schultz's encroachment on their territory. Bumpy's wife, Mamie Hatcher, would later recount in her biography that he waged a guerrilla war of sorts, picking off Schultz's men one by one. Now that I think about it, everything Bumpy dabbled in is pretty much what the mafia bosses did to make money after Prohibition ended, shaped by the post-Prohibition underworld. After Prohibition ended, the mafia needed new ways to make money. They started focusing on casino gambling. When the Great Depression eased, tourism grew, giving the mafia a chance to attract rich tourists and locals to their illegal gambling operations. Meyer Lansky, a key mafia boss, saw the opportunity. He and his partners set up seasonal casinos near big cities and tourist spots like Broward County near Miami and Saratoga, which are known for horse racing. The mafia used these casinos to cheat gamblers and make lots of money. Fancy casinos were built to attract rich people and those who love excitement. They had luxurious interiors, extravagant shows, and lots of games like poker and slot machines. But the mafia didn't just provide places to gamble. They controlled everything behind the scenes, making sure they always won. The games were fixed, the dealers were paid off, and the casino always made money. To stay in charge, the mafia used threats and bribes. They made sure anyone who could hurt their business was taken care of. Cops, politicians, and even other gangsters were either paid off or silenced, so the mafia stayed in control of the gambling business. Illegal casinos weren't just helpful for the mafia. Local authorities and government officials chose to ignore their existence in exchange for a cut of the profits. The mafia's influence was widespread, corrupting people in power at all levels of society. Many people were drawn to these casinos. Wealthy tourists came hoping to win big or enjoy the excitement of gambling. The mafia knew how to please them, offering fancy accommodations, great food, and top entertainment. These places became popular spots for the rich and famous to play high-stakes games. The mafia wasn't only involved in big fancy casinos. They also ran secret gambling spots in cities like Harlem, which Bumpy and his men helped facilitate at first. These spots worked like the old illegal lotteries, with people betting on daily numbers. Despite poor customer service and low payouts, the mafia made money from these operations. They knew people would keep coming, hoping to win big, so the mafia gladly took their money. Prostitution was always profitable for organized crime, even during Prohibition. After alcohol became legal again, Lucky Luciano, who later worked with Bumpy, saw a chance to expand this business. Luciano wanted to create a huge prostitution network in the U.S. He knew there would always be a demand for these services, and he planned to take full advantage of it. Under Luciano's leadership, the mafia took control of brothels, escort services, and street prostitution. They forced young women into these roles through coercion and manipulation, treating them as commodities to be bought and sold for profit. The mafia used enforcers to ensure the women stayed under their control, using intimidation and violence to maintain obedience. They also bribed law enforcement and government officials to avoid interference in their operations. The end of Prohibition led to a big increase in the demand for illegal drugs. The mafia saw this as a great chance to make money. They used their networks to get involved in selling drugs like cocaine, heroin, and marijuana. This made them the middlemen, connecting drug suppliers with buyers. The profits were huge, and the mafia liked the risks involved. Lucky Luciano was a key player in this change. He saw the opportunity to make money from selling drugs. He knew that more and more people wanted drugs, so he got involved quickly. Under Luciano's leadership, the mafia started bringing drugs into the country from places like South America and Asia. They set up secret paths to sneak the drugs in, using a network of people they knew and bribing officials to keep things safe. But it wasn't easy. The police were getting better at stopping drug smuggling, and other gangs wanted a piece of the drug business too. Despite this, the mafia stayed ahead by being ruthless and determined. To protect their business and power, the mafia used violence and threats. They killed rival gang members and paid off police. They made sure everyone was scared to challenge them. This fear helped them keep control of the drug trade and make a lot of money. The mafia wasn't just selling drugs, they were also making them. They had secret labs hidden away where their chemists worked hard to make top-quality drugs. These drugs were then sold all over the country by a big network of dealers. Controlling everything from making the drugs to selling them gave the mafia a big advantage. They made tons of money from selling drugs, even more than they did during Prohibition. They were good at adapting and finding new ways to make money, even when things got tough. Some criminals decided to stay away from drugs and instead took advantage of a legal loophole to keep doing their illegal activities. Bumpy thrived in this post-Prohibition era. In 1935, Schultz's reign of terror came to an abrupt end when Italian mobster Charles "Lucky" Luciano ordered a hit on him. With Schultz out of the picture, a power vacuum was created in Harlem's criminal underworld. It was a pivotal moment for Bumpy Johnson, as he would soon step into the spotlight and take control of the neighborhood's illegal gambling operations. With his newfound control over Harlem's racket operations, Bumpy Johnson's empire continued to flourish. He became the leading operator of the neighborhood's underground casino scene, solidifying his status as the Harlem Godfather. Alongside the Harlem numbers racket, Bumpy ventured into the world of drug trafficking, primarily focusing on the sale of heroin. As his criminal enterprise expanded, Bumpy became the kingpin of Harlem, overseeing all illegal activities in the neighborhood. Any illicit ventures had to be approved by Johnson himself, ensuring his dominance and control. The profits from Bumpy's criminal activities allowed him to provide for the most vulnerable in Harlem. He became a modern-day Robin Hood, using his ill-gotten gains to support the community he ruled over. Bumpy delivered meals to those in need, distributed gifts during the holiday season, and even provided free turkeys at Thanksgiving. But his philanthropy didn't stop there. Bumpy's generosity extended to the education of financially struggling families. He established scholarships, ensuring that the children of Harlem had the opportunity to pursue higher education. Bumpy understood the importance of empowering the next generation and giving them a chance to break free from the cycle of poverty. However, Bumpy's benevolent acts were in stark contrast to his ruthless nature as a crime boss. He was not one to be crossed, and those who dared to challenge his authority faced dire consequences. Yet, amidst the criminal activities and the violence, Bumpy Johnson maintained a complex persona. He was a man of contradictions, embodying both the darkness and the light. While he was a ruthless crime boss, he was also a devoted family man. Bumpy cherished his wife, Mamie Hatcher, and their children, providing for them and ensuring their safety. Beyond his criminal pursuits, Bumpy had a surprising intellectual side. He was an avid reader of philosophy, delving into the works of great thinkers and pondering the deeper questions of life. Bumpy's love for literature and poetry added another layer to his already multifaceted character. In the eyes of the public, Bumpy Johnson was a figure to be feared, loved, and admired. He had become the anti-hero of Harlem, a man who defied societal expectations and stood up for his community. As Bumpy Johnson's criminal empire continued to thrive, law enforcement intensified their efforts to bring him down. The authorities were determined to put an end to his reign as the Harlem Godfather and dismantle his vast network of illegal activities. Bumpy found himself facing a new set of challenges, both from within and outside his organization. One of the significant turning points during this period was the formation of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930. The FBN, led by its relentless director, Harry J. Anslinger, made it their mission to combat the growing drug trade in America. Bumpy's involvement in drug trafficking put him directly in the crosshairs of the FBN. The FBN's efforts to bring down Bumpy Johnson were further intensified when he expanded his drug operations beyond Harlem. Bumpy's influence reached far and wide as he sought to establish a foothold in other cities, including Chicago and Detroit. This expansion drew the attention of law enforcement agencies across the country. Despite the mounting pressure, Bumpy was not one to back down easily. He recognized the need to protect his empire and forge alliances with powerful figures who could offer him support and protection. One of the key alliances he formed was with the infamous Italian mobster Charles "Lucky" Luciano. Luciano, a prominent racketeer and New York cardroom operator, had also been feeling the effects of Dutch Schultz's attempted takeover. With Schultz out of the picture, Luciano saw an opportunity to solidify his own power and expand his influence. He recognized Bumpy's strength and the two struck a deal that would shape the course of their criminal careers. The agreement between Bumpy Johnson and Lucky Luciano allowed Johnson to control all racket operations in Harlem, while Luciano received a share of the profits. This alliance not only ensured Bumpy's continued dominance in Harlem, but also provided him with a powerful ally in the face of law enforcement scrutiny, the Godfather of Harlem. In 1952, Bumpy Johnson found himself facing a harsh reality. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for conspiring to sell heroin, marking the longest sentence he would ever serve in his lifetime. Despite his desperate appeals, the verdict remained unchanged, and Bumpy was sent to the infamous Alcatraz, the most feared and impenetrable prison in America. For the next 10 years, Bumpy Johnson would endure the harsh realities of life behind bars. Rumors circulated that he used his connections on the outside to aid in the escape of 3 fellow inmates, though these reports were never confirmed. Some speculated that Bumpy himself could have escaped, but he chose to remain incarcerated, perhaps preferring the freedom of being a free agent rather than a fugitive on the run. After serving a decade in the formidable walls of Alcatraz, Bumpy Johnson emerged into a world that had drastically changed. Harlem, once his kingdom, had fallen under the control of the Italian mafia. The narcotics trade, once dominated by Bumpy, was now firmly in the grip of these ruthless gangsters. As Bumpy made his triumphant return to the streets of Harlem, he was met with a mixture of celebration and trepidation. The community that had revered him as a hero now looked to him with hope, yearning for his leadership and protection. They longed for the days when Bumpy's rule brought stability and prosperity to the neighborhood. But the Italian mafia, led by powerful figures such as Frank Costello, had firmly established their presence in Harlem. They had infiltrated every aspect of the narcotics trade, flooding the streets with their illicit products. Bumpy knew that reclaiming his territory would not be an easy task. A bloody war ensued between Bumpy and the Italian mafia. The streets of Harlem became a battleground, with violence erupting at every turn. Bumpy's loyal soldiers fought fiercely, determined to reclaim their turf. The clashes were fierce, with lives lost on both sides. But Bumpy's strategic mind proved to be his greatest weapon. He devised cunning plans to weaken the Italian mafia's grip on Harlem, targeting their operations and disrupting their supply chains. Slowly but surely, Bumpy began to chip away at their empire. As the war waged on, Bumpy's reputation as a fearless leader grew stronger. The people of Harlem rallied behind him, inspired by his commitment to their community. They saw him as a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the midst of darkness. Eventually, Bumpy's relentless efforts paid off. He successfully brokered a truce between the black community of Harlem and the Italian mafia, bringing an end to the bloodshed. It was a hard-fought victory, one that came at a great cost. But Bumpy had reclaimed his throne and restored a sense of order to Harlem. With the narcotics trade back under his control, Bumpy used his newfound power and wealth to support the vulnerable and impoverished in his community. He established programs and initiatives aimed at providing opportunities for the youth of Harlem, ensuring that they had a chance to escape the cycle of poverty and violence. Amidst another indictment for trafficking crimes, Bumpy Johnson's life took an unexpected turn. In 1968, the man who had once ruled the streets of Harlem with an iron fist met his demise in a rather anticlimactic manner. Bumpy Johnson, the notorious mob boss, died of a heart attack. It was a surprising end to a life filled with violence and turbulence. Despite numerous attempts on his life by rival drug lords and mafia gangsters, it was cholesterol that ultimately claimed the life of Harlem's most notorious crime boss. Bumpy's wife, Mamie, reflected on his passing, remarking that it was perhaps the best possible way for Bumpy or any man to meet his end. Mamie said, "Bumpy's life may have been a violent and turbulent one, but his death was one that any Harlem sporting man would pray for. Eating fried chicken at Wells Restaurant in the wee hours of the morning surrounded by friends. It just can't get better than that." Bumpy Johnson's life was one of contradictions and complexities. While he was loved by the Harlem community he provided for, the means by which he acquired his wealth were often despicable, harming the very same community he aimed to help. His empire was built on the foundation of drug trafficking, flooding the streets with illicit substances that ravaged lives. Yet, in a strange twist of fate, Bumpy used the proceeds from his criminal enterprises to support the vulnerable and impoverished in Harlem. He funded educational opportunities, provided financial assistance, and gave hope to those who had been marginalized by society. It was a paradoxical existence, one that left a lasting impact on the community he called home. Thanks to Bumpy's influence and financial support, many of Harlem's youth were able to escape the cycle of violence. They were given opportunities that would have otherwise been out of reach, allowing them to pursue education and ascend beyond their humble beginnings. However, it is impossible to ignore the dark side of Bumpy's legacy. His criminal activities led to the loss of countless lives and perpetuated a cycle of violence and addiction. The streets of Harlem bore the scars of his reign, and the pain inflicted on the community was undeniable. Bumpy Johnson's story is a reminder of the complexities of human nature. He was both a hero and a villain, a figure who brought both prosperity and destruction to Harlem. His life was a reflection of the turbulent times in which he lived, shaped by racial violence and a thirst for power. As the years have passed, Bumpy's legend has only grown. His story has been immortalized in various forms of popular culture, from films like Shaft and American Gangster to the recent TV series Godfather of Harlem. Bumpy's life continues to captivate audiences, a man who straddled the line between good and evil. If you enjoyed this video, click on the card showing on your screen right now for more videos.